You're listening to the Gender Reveal Party podcast. I'm your host, Jay Pryor. This isn't your usual gender reveal party. There will be no baby sex parts. This is the real reveal, where we reveal gender through stories of brave humans willing to share their lived experience. Enjoy the listening. I sure enjoy making it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Gender Reveal Party podcast. I'm Jay Pryor, host, and I'm really grateful for our host. Sometimes I hear myself say, I'm excited, but I'm really grateful for the opportunity to talk to my friend Anthony Barnett. Thank you, Anthony, for joining us. And Anthony is a cisgender white dude. So why are we talking to you about the Gender Reveal Party podcast? I'm actually really excited to have this conversation with Anthony because, first of all, Anthony is an ally and a strong ally in our town. And when I first met you, I think I met you through the Humane Society. You're on the board.
Yeah. I think you came and facilitated one of the meetings.
Yeah.
I remember correctly.
And then the first time we ever talked, you shared with me your story about your experience being an other. And I'd love for you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, but let's jump in here and talk about what are we talking about? What are we here? Talk about your allyship first, because I think that's important.
Okay. Well, I would argue that I'm an imperfect ally. I'm still learning, still trying to figure things out, but I just care. So I don't always get it right, but I try. But so I would say almost kind of feels like a lifetime ago when I was working in pit bull rescue. And that was really like having a pit bull, which I wasn't raised with them and I didn't seek one out, and I wasn't an enthusiast before I had my first one, which just happened to be a dog who needed a home. So I really wasn't braced for what came with owning a pit bull, and I felt like it kind of thrust me into that other category that you mentioned. It was really the first time, given my social status and education and upbringing, it was really the first time I'd experienced any limitations. Like owning a pit bull sort of casts you in a certain light. I think more so 15, 20 years ago than it does now. But it really was, I could see it. I could walk down the street. I could see people cross the street when they saw me. I got real involved in fighting pit bull bans, which was really like entire cities that I couldn't move to if I had my dog. Insurance companies wouldn't cover you. I had to lie about what kind of dog I had till I got a different insurance. It just kind of put me on the lookout for feeling limited, for feeling judged, for just feeling those things really for the first time. And I would always was kind of in pit bull rescue because of how it connected me to people. I mean, I always cared about the dogs, but really the thing for me was imagining other people in my situation and having to give up their dog, like how much my dog means to me.
Sure.
So I wanted to advocate for those other people. So the human canine bond was always kind of a window to connect with other people for me. So I really started to view the pit bull situation in that terms. It was a real window into racism, especially, but class issues and just othering in general. It was kind of I got a window into that. I mean, obviously a lesser degree, I leave my dog at home, but it was at least a window for me.
Sure, absolutely. And so that gives us an opportunity to let people know what you do, because in addition to a really cool like doggy daycare, you have some really powerful stuff with your symbiotic work. Can you talk about that just a little bit? I want people to know who you are and what like part of that piece.
Sure. So I've run Home Sweet Home Dog Resort. I've owned it for, it was 18 years in December. So about 18 and a half years. Yeah, I know, right? That's where all this gray comes from. And then, through work with that, I started doing pit bull rescue, and then work with pit bull rescue. I started to get into working with specifically rescuing and working with fighting dogs who've been abused. That became kind of our specialty, especially after I met my wife, does animal laws, animal attorney. We kind of made a team. I could go help law enforcement with the dogs, and she could help with the disposition and kind of the legal side of the cases. And that was just kind of our niche before the bigger organizations. So like once the Michael Vick case happened, then bigger organizations kind of got into it. But for a while, we were one of the only organizations in the country that would work with fighting dogs. The Michael Vick case changed a lot for us. I was honestly, it did more good for pit bulls than he ever could have done harm, which is kind of an irony of that situation. But
Yeah.
anyway, through my work with those dogs and kind of working on some of my own issues, my own brain wiring and anxiety and things like that, I really started to see some similar needs that we had, similar symptoms we experienced, similar sort of therapy and dog training sort of mirroring each other, and even down to sometimes the same medications. And that spun me off into the Symbiotic Behavioral Treatment Center, which is a mental health model. We call it parallel and converging paths, where we take, dogs that need some rehabilitation, need some work, and people walking the same path. And sometimes they do things on their own, and other times they come together and do them together. So it's not exactly the animal assisted therapy model where you would find your service dogs and therapy dogs and emotional assistance animals, but it's a little bit different. It's a rehabilitation for all parties involved.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And a lot of your humans that are rehabilitating are vets. Is that accurate?
Yeah, one of my areas of passion has been working with veterans. My dad was a pilot and flew in the Air Force. I never did serve. I was kind of a sickly kid, but I did think with everything going on, that was kind of my way of, if I wasn't going to help on the front side, I sure could help on the back side of that. So I've spent a lot of years volunteering at the VA. The last few years before COVID, kind of this stuff we talk about, the SBTC became a class that I taught at the VA for about 4 years, I think. And then COVID kind of was a wrecking ball and all that. They shut down the VA campus and volunteers couldn't come for almost 2 years. So I just reached out again. In that time, I lost one of my therapy dogs to lymphoma. And oddly, they're unrelated. Leonidas, the one I still have, also had lymphoma, but he is in over 2 years in remission.
Nice.
But he'll be 15 in May, and he's just not the same dog.
So, I'm sure.
We still, every Thursday we go visit a behavior court, which is a diversionary program here in Douglas County, keep people out of jail. And we still love it. He still loves it, but it's different. I have to wagon him in from the car because he can't walk that far. And then we take him out of the wagon. He walks around, says hi to everybody. And it's just the hardest work he does all week. He crashes the whole rest of the night.
Poor guy.
So he loves it. He's happy, but he's definitely,
Are you training any other pups behind him to be able to do that work?
It's funny. This might be a little deep into the emotional weeds here, but my wife and I had 8 dogs, 4 each when we met ish. And we've lost them all over the last few years.
Yeah.
And I was just coming to terms with needing to grieve the dogs that I've lost before I replaced. We had a little girl who we thought would make a good therapy dog, and it turns out she was perfect therapy for my old men dogs, but not really for therapy work. So she was the perfect fit in our house. She was the perfect pet that we needed. But I've made the decision. Leonidas is almost 15. Our other old man is 15. They both are kind of falling apart, and they need a lot of attention.
Sure.
And I just wanted to finish the emotional journey with them. I did feel that pressure to have another therapy dog in the queue so I could just continue the work uninterrupted. But I really have decided to finish that emotional journey with them and then start to look around for a new therapy dog.
Yeah, they're part of your family, man. That's a deep
loss. They are. And I had to come to terms with, I sort of always had one in the queue that was going to enter the death process. And I was really using the work of caring for the next one to avoid the emotional work of dealing with losing the last one. And I had to kind of stop that cycle and just, feel the loss and grieve it and move on. So,
sure. Yeah. Well, and I thank you for, first of all, for sharing all that. And part of the reason I wanted the audience to to know about this is because I want them to get a little bit grounded in who you are as a human being.
Okay.
Because again, it's like, why do you have this cisgender dude on the show? But there's some things that Anthony and I have in common from the very first time that we met, and there's a couple of journeys that we've kind of taken, parallel journeys, even though we're in the same town. I would assert that we're friends. We don't hang out. It's not like we're like, hanging out together all the time or
Yeah,
best buds or anything. But the very first time I ever met you, I adored you. I like you. I love your work. I think we have a mutual respect for one another.
absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
but the first time I met you, first of all, the first time I met you, you were like a lot bigger than you are right now. Right. So
Oh,
when
yeah.
I
Yeah, I've lost about 35 pounds. Yeah.
yeah, folks, if you knew what he looked like when I first met him, like this guy was buff, and I mean like really, really buff. You used to spend a lot of time in the gym, right? So
Yeah, I still work out. I do a little bit different exercises now. I've had to deal with a lot of neck and back pain, and most
yeah,
of my exercises now
you were like
are centered around.
buff
Uh,
man.
I I will say I was fortunate enough to have muscle shaped fat. I was
That
I
is
was
bullshit.
I was definitely
Muscle shaped fat. You're
I was
full of it. This guy was super buff. um, um, so at the time, my point though, in the time I met you was the masculinization of yourself was intense, right? You had the
yeah,
beard going and you had the muscles, right?
yeah.
Because there is such a thing as like the more like, and what we're here to talk about, right, for the most part, is masculinization of human beings, and then what that looks, why or what
Mhm.
the difference between the more masculine man versus the less masculine man or the more masculine human, right? And so when I first
Yeah.
met you, you were a lot more physically masculine, right, than I would
Hmm.
assert you are now, right? And there's a couple of things that I want to weave in and out of talking about here because you and I have a couple of similar experiences. Number one, and this is kind of, I'm going to have to try to bridge this gap for the rest of the world if they can figure this out a little bit. I assert there's this world that I live in called the butch femme community, right?
Okay.
Where we as butch humans, women and or trans or non-binary human who identify with a more masculine like expression have a
Hmm.
real powerful attraction to what we would call higher femme or femme women, right? So there's this real contrast in our relationships.
Hmm.
Back in the day, you know, we're the ones that they would always be like, you just want to be a man. It's like, no, I don't want to be a man, but I am a masculine expressed person who happens to be attracted to very femme expressed humans, right? So I assert that that scale exists in the straight world too, right? And you are one of those people. And and we would joke about, which I want to address with you at some point, that we are both members of the Hot Wives Club,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah,
So because we both have smoking hot femme wives. Now, folks, most of the time when we would talk about this, this is a couple drinks in, right?
yeah.
Because I want to make sure that we and I think this is something you and I think have in common a lot is we try to check ourselves around our own sexism, right? And we certainly don't have trophy wives like we have, like there's some object, right? Our wives are smarter
No,
than us. We
absolutely.
very clear. Our wives are smarter than
Yeah.
us, and like that. But and at the same time, um, there's a very uh, a resonance that I have with you as a guy who has a beautiful wife who, that's you have a very masculine, feminine, like that your relationship is a masculine, feminine, like we could put you on the stage and like there's a masculine, feminine people, right? Where
Yeah.
not all straight people are like that, right? You know what I mean? Like there's gender goes in such a fluid, weird way that not everybody's like that. And so you're one of the guys that I have, like you and I have that in common. The other thing we have in common that I think is interesting, and this is what you and I started to talk about before, is when you did transformations, you shaved off your beard.
Mm-hmm.
When you shaved off your beard, you had to deal with your face without the
Mm-hmm.
beard. I've recently shaved off my beard.
I noticed it's different.
Puts me in the other category, right? Because I've been off testosterone now for 5 years. So when
Mm.
I'm out in the world now with the beard off, people, in fact, I just got done traveling and nobody used a he pronoun with me. I got
Really?
she and her pronouns the whole time. And then when people would use she and her pronouns, though, sometimes somebody would say, it's her turn, right? And people look at me and be like, well, who are you talking to? Who's the her that you're referring to? So without my beard, I'm way back into that other category, having been off testosterone for 5 years. And you had that experience of shaving off your beard, and then it's like, oh, the masculinization. It's like the masculinization. The more my point is, the more masculine you are in our world, I assert, the safer you
Yeah,
are,
yeah,
the
I
more
could see that.
privilege you have.
Yeah, I could see that, like
Yeah,
physically and emotionally.
yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, I would say just, I'm still just with being around my wife. Sort of, I just never really thought about safety as much as she does.
right.
Like even when we've pulled up and I'm parking at a store, and she'll just make the comment like, I would never just park on this dark side of this store. I'm gonna, go park over there in the light or whatever. Or stories of taking Ubers and just having to make calculations and observations of things that I just have never been in my mind.
Right. You've never had to have that.
No, I mean, there's other guys. I clock other guys if I view them as a potential threat, especially as I get older. I'm just like, I'm getting out of this situation. This person seems pretty intense and a little unpredictable. Versus when you're younger, you're like, hey, we might have to beat that guy's ass. Like,
Yeah,
I'm older, a little bit different calculation now.
yeah,
I'm just like, hey, there's just no need for me to be in this situation. So let's move along.
right. So I like that the first thing off the bat on your mind is safety, because that is something that as a classically trained female, we are trained. When you're trained female, you're trained to know who's around you all the time. You know who's in the bathroom with you, which is why it's dangerous for, it's easier for me to go to the men's room because men won't look. They don't care. If
Mm-hmm.
I take this face into the women's room, then I'm going to get someone screamed at me or toilet paper thrown at me or something,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
they're clocked for safety, where that's not even on your radar. Doesn't even, it's not a
Not
thing.
usually, not unless you're talking about something specifically like you're in a rough part of town or something. Yeah,
Right.
I'm generally not concerned about my safety.
Right. But then the other thing that you just spoke to, that I speak about this, that as a woman going into the world of man, that I did not know, was that there is a threat of physical violence if I'm in some kind of altercation somewhere. If you have a man face on, someone can punch you or will.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
With
Yeah.
your with my woman face, people are just gonna call me a bitch and push me maybe. But I've been punched in the face because they thought I was a dude. Um,
Wow.
yeah, but I've never been when people think I'm a woman, they don't punch me. They just want to scream at me or call me a bitch or whatever. But as a someone when before I was even on testosterone, I got clocked as a guy. I got punched in the face. So that's stuff you guys have to have on your radar, that you can be punched.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think, I mean, there's sort of a joke within the male communities that's part of the sort of result of the internet culture is it's real easy to pop off with the mouth on the internet, and then now that's the whole fuck around and find out joke, right? Like now you're out in the world. If you pop off like you do on the internet, you get punched.
Yeah,
And so it's, I think I think the internet has sort of taken that out of young men's radars in a way.
yeah,
Certain young men are just not as consciously aware of like, hey man, I can't act that way around other men.
right.
Or that sort of, and I'm not saying that it's good or bad, I'm just speaking of it as a difference. Like that
Yeah.
code seems to have changed of
Well,
like,
and you talk about it like it's just, and that's what I learned, is like it's just reality. I mean, it's
yeah,
just how it is.
there's just certain ways you wouldn't treat another man,
Yeah,
or he might handle you
right,
as a result. Yeah,
right.
definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And for
yeah,
me
I
coming
would
into
say
that
that
as a
that's
woman
changing.
face with a mouthy mouth, right? With my mouth, I had to learn. Oh shit! I need to shut my mouth. I want to get punched. Guys will put their hands on you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's a definite change.
Yeah. And then like, I mean, part of the reason I wanted to talk to you is because you're one of my favorite, like when we do engage, we have real powerful conversations. And so let's talk about this classic training for a minute. Because one of the things that I speak about is like up until I was 12, it was all good, right? Until I was 11 or 12, I could be as tomboyish as I wanted to be. And then in junior high,
Mm,
something happens to girls where all of a sudden it's like, now you're a certain age, you got to act like a lady. Like, straighten up, fly right. You can't play football anymore. You got to, like, straighten up, start carrying purses and dresses and doing all this stuff. I
hmm.
assert with guys, there's something happens around the same age, but it's more like now you can't touch each other. You can't, that's when it turns into, oh, you got to
Yeah,
start wrestling so you can touch each
yeah,
other. I'm
yeah,
100% clear about that. Like, I've
yeah.
seen
That
more
was weird
junior
because
high boys wrestle.
I did wrestle in high school. Yeah,
Yeah.
that that
Well, you can't touch each other otherwise, right? There's no way
yeah.
they're allowed to like hug each other, you know.
This is skipping ahead a little bit. Sorry, I feel weird about my. There we go. This is skipping ahead a little bit, but I feel like that's been one of the benefits, I guess, of the the more I've worked around with police, especially, and the more of actual combat veterans coming back and having experiences. Most of the combat veteran, like the actual sort of alpha male, whatever, are very forward of like, hey man, I love you. We give each other a hug. It feels like once the safety and security of our modern life is removed, men are a lot more comfortable expressing emotion to other men.
Yeah.
And I've found, I'm fortunately I'm around emotionally mature men, and it's definitely become, especially as you got older, you realize someday I'm not going to be here, and at any day it could end. You just start to think old man thoughts instead of young man thoughts,
I agree.
and it just becomes a little easier to be physically affectionate. But I think a lot of that ground has been broken by what would be called the typically alpha male groups. A lot of the vets and guys that I work around, say, hey man, I love you,
Yeah.
and a hug when we leave. And that
Yeah.
I just think that's a real interesting juxtaposition around the sort of versus the trying too hard wannabe alpha males
Right.
who sort of ultra masculinize everything and make affection out to be feminine and all
Yes.
this stuff. And I'm
Right.
always just like, man, if you're really a secure man, you're not worried about saying I love you and hugging another man. I mean, that
Right.
you're just not worried about that. You
And don't you
just don't
think
think
that
about it.
sports, I mean, maybe I'm making this up, but my experience is that there's like those uber alpha males in other contexts, like you said, the soldier, or in my uh experience, the biker, or like you bikers have this reputation of being scary, right?
Yeah.
Bikers are the most loving people. I know some of the most. It's just like that's not even real to me. I don't
Yeah.
think of bikers as scary. I think
No,
of them
actually,
as lovely human beings.
I actually have a Harley. My dad rode Harleys and he loved to ride, and I bought
Yeah.
one to ride with him before he died.
Hmm.
And then I kept it up for a little while after he was gone, and once I had started having my girls, I just kind of stopped.
Right.
It just seemed like the dumbest thing in the world
Well,
to
yeah,
die
because I mean,
doing.
you got three kids.
But yeah, I actually have a Harley. I actually have mine and my dad's in the garage. I'm holding my dad gave it to my brother after he passed, and so I'm kind of holding it for him. But yeah, I guess I would kind of fit in that category a little
Yeah,
bit.
but I mean, that's my point. Is there's not really it's a stereotype, but and it exists, but it's not that much my experience in the world most
Yeah,
of the time. And I go into businesses. I mean, I'm working with CEOs who are, you know, in charge of companies, and they're men, and they're engaging my work, which is all about like, really getting up under what you believe about yourself and all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, it's not I don't have that experience in the world personally, but I think a lot of that is about like what we attract into our lives because we're those kind of people. And that there is definitely a stereotype where an uber masculine, it's like you can't touch people, you can't, be like that. I think that's getting less and less with the younger generation. I think there's a whole generation that'll probably need to die off for that to completely go away. But
So
a lot.
we have there's this thing in dog training called an extinction burst.
Mm,
And when you're trying to train a behavior out of your dog, the classic example would be if your dog jumps on you when your dog gets home, it's because that behavior was rewarded and reinforced, right? You
right.
either pet the dog or do whatever. And as you start to ignore the dog or you don't give affection until the dog's on the ground, dogs can do that behavior harder before it stops doing it.
Right.
And that's called a like, hey man, when I used to jump up and greet you, you used to pet my head. And so they'll jump a little harder, jump a little more
Mm,
because they just think I just need to do that behavior harder, before it extinguishes,
right.
extinction burst.
Yeah.
And my wife and I joke a lot that I think culturally we're dealing with a lot of extinction bursts right
No,
now.
I think that's a great way to put that. No,
I
it's
think
really,
people are doing things a lot harder before they give it up.
yeah.
Um, and I would argue too that um, I think, and I know that I've used more gender typical words than you use. I get nervous about this stuff. It feels like sometimes progressives don't let people progress.
Right. No
Like you have to
kidding.
either have it right
Have it right.
or fuck
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
and I get a little nervous sometimes, but I do think I always picture like when you're editing your photos, you can change the black point and the brightness and the whatever. And I just sort of think of people that way, that everything's kind of a sliding scale,
Yeah.
be it your sexual orientation, gender, or whatever. I just think of, and your masculine, feminine. I would imagine there's straight men who present feminine but still really like feminine women. Like I don't really know. I just sort of imagine everything
Yeah.
on
No,
a.
all over the place. They're all over the
But I
place.
do think that masculine and feminine, at least in my brain, would be the ends of that spectrum, regardless of
Yes.
what gender it assigns to. I think masculine men are not present in pop culture because we're busy, and I think the loudest mouths are not actually very masculine men. I think they feel the need to be loud because they don't feel very secure in their masculinity, and they feel the need to make up for it. And I think that's the example that other men are getting.
I agree.
The masculine men are busy spending time with their friends, being good men to their wife, taking care of their kids, whatever their partner, whatever they're doing, they're not on talk radio saying that anything remotely emotionally mature is feminine. Like that's just we're just busy,
Yeah.
and I do think as young men seek, I think that creates a void of honest masculine um, example in pop culture, and I think that void is being filled by these loud, insecure people. And some of that for me too is informed by dog behavior. It's easy to see confident dog versus insecure dog, and I see that a lot in the way men present. Who's
Yeah.
really confident and who's insecure? Are they aggressing out of fear? Um, I don't know. That's probably a different path, but anyway, it
No, it
informs the
makes
way I
perfect
think
sense. I
about.
think anything you could put on a dog, you could probably put on. I mean, human beings we're animals. We wire ourselves up, all that same stuff. One of the things that I end up dealing with a lot as a coach, because I coach a lot of women exclusively.
Huh.
And so I end up not dealing with, I end up coaching women who are dealing with men who, and I'm not saying that women don't have something to do with this because obviously they're coaching with me. So I'm asking them to deal with themselves. But what's happened to them is that their husband is another child that they have to deal with. Right. And
Mm.
like, it's really interesting to me that and it's a conversation for somebody who I know because I know that you're a full partner with your wife, and I think it's getting better because I think that's a lot of that whole generational stuff. But what would you say to like guys, especially the younger men? I'm not that concerned about, but guys that are you know I'm 56, and I think you're younger than I am, but between like 40 and 55, you got a whole group of men whose women are like now kind of starting to take themselves on, and they want to be different, and they don't want to like make their sandwiches for them all the time, and they don't want to have to clean up after them all the time. They want to evolve out of that, but the guy's like, I mean, this is my experience, is the women hit this point where they're like, I want to be a different person than I was when I was married. And the guys are like, I want to be the same guy you married for the rest of my life. Right. So like, that's
Mhm.
my experience. I don't know what yours is over there, but I'm interested to see like what you're like, what would you say to those guys? What do we say to those guys? How do we help them? Because I'm telling you, they're getting left by the in droves.
Well, I actually think, from what you're saying, I actually think this does apply to the young men, especially. I think this is what powers the whole incel movement. This idea that uh, I deserve a woman, or a woman's supposed to be attracted to me, or that if there's something wrong, it's wrong with the woman or with feminism. I think this really powers the incel movement, where instead of I should become a better man, I should become a man that a woman wants to be with. It's feminism is making this woman feel like I'm not a good man.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it does power this. The young men, I think it powers the what I see to be a lot of toxic communication traits. And I want to go off on a little tangent before I finish that thought. I think even pop culture, like even in my generation, a hard lesson I had to learn: if a woman doesn't want to talk to you, just fucking let her go, because you're kind of not programmed for that. You're programmed like, if every movie, every romance, everything, like, hey, are you gonna fight for this? Are you gonna
Yeah.
fight for this woman? Are
Harrison
you gonna fight
Ford,
for this
man.
relationship?
Go after that woman until she says yes.
Yeah, like so even before it got to this level, there was still, I mean, I had to let that go. I was a little persistent at times because I thought that was romantic,
Right.
and now I know it's creepy.
Me too.
And
I did some creepy things because I was doing stuff that I thought
right,
that I was
like
following what guys do.
yeah, like,
You know what I
hey,
mean? Like, I don't know
I'm
how to
showing
do
you,
this.
yeah, I care about you, so I'm gonna
Putting on the
fight for
full
you.
court press here because I think that's what I'm supposed to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I would say then on the other end of that spectrum, I would say that I'm almost to I wouldn't, well, maybe to a fault, maybe I should own it. I'm paranoid about not being a good partner. I want I'm very present at home. I've taken on most of the domestic stuff here after we've had kids, because my business is a little mature. Oddly, my businesses are run by a team of amazing women, that I find myself more a support role to them. Like, what do you need? How can I help you do this? Or I'm the handyman. I come fix things when they're broken. Um, so as we started having kids, I'm 18 years into my business, and my wife's law practice is only, well, she's 10 years into being an attorney, but her actual law practice maybe only 3 or 4 years old, maybe 5. I'm old, so my sense of time is not what it was. But it's just more is being asked of her, more is demanded of her. She's not a more mature, or the business cycle is not as mature. So it just makes more sense for me to do the laundry and cook, clean, kind of do everything at home. And I feel like sometimes I hover around her and set the stage for her life as she's doing it, like make sure the water bottle's filled. I staged towels for the bath, and I mean, almost in a way, kind of hover around her, and like I want her to be able to focus on work and being a mom, because the kids are just demanding of her in a way that they're not of me. They just won't let me do the same things. So in my mind, if I want to be an equal partner, then I need to take on all these other things that the kids don't let me do, or that my business isn't asking of me right now.
Right.
We're developing other businesses, so that dynamic will likely shift. Some of that calculus too is our really old dogs. I just have to be more present for them. They just need the constant attention. But I do think, I do very much have in my head that I need to earn my wife every day, and I don't.
See, this is what we have in common. That's what I mean. But that's, I
Yeah,
don't know what that, I equate that from my perspective is as a butch. I mean, we tease about the fact that I was trained by femmes, you know. So like, I'm trained. I'm very well trained. I'm a well trained butch. But that's, for me, it's a love that I have to serve and to, like. That's what
yeah,
I make her coffee every morning, right? Like that's
yeah,
just every night I sit up the coffee pot. Like I do those things because A, that's my love language, but B, it's also part of being married to this woman who I want to serve.
yeah. I would
I
agree
want to
with
be
both of those things.
all those
We're big into
things.
the. I'm big into the love languages, and my wife's primary love language is acts of service, which happens to be one that I love to speak.
Right.
So that works out for me.
Same.
But yeah, I think some of it is coming around to that what's that song? I Want You to Want Me. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want my wife to be like, I'm stuck here, or I'm married, or what, like I want her to feel like it's something she wants to be a part of.
Right.
I think I view that as masculine, I guess. I don't really know. I think being a good man in your home is pretty masculine. I don't know. Like,
I
maybe
do
not.
too, but I would assert that that's not the norm, because I know so many women who also work full-time jobs, but then are expected to do 90% of the housework and all of the cooking, and you know what I mean? Like they both work
Yeah.
full-time jobs, but she's expected to do all the domestic stuff and do all the feeding and grocery shopping and all that kind of
Well,
stuff. It's very interesting.
I joke about this, and I had to recently in a conversation with my wife, I had to own up that maybe I joke about it too much, but I, if I guess we should expand this out to include emotional intimacy. If you want your wife to have time and
Right.
energy to want to be with you,
Right.
you need to create that time and energy.
Create that time and
Not
energy.
yeah,
That's right.
not just physically, obviously,
Right.
emotionally too.
But
But
yeah.
we've been talking about that. Like I did miss. We used to go out a lot. We used to go out to dinner probably 5 nights a week. We spent a lot. And that's his life before kids, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it's really important to me that we stay romantic as a couple. So I do view part of that, playing that role here, taking those things off of Katie's plate, as then creating time for us.
Yeah.
We can go out on date night. She can have energy to talk, or whatever that leads to in the evening when she comes home. It really is about wanting to protect the romantic idea of us.
Right.
And I do say us, but I want my wife to think of herself also as a woman and a wife, and not just as a beat down mother. I know women have to wear all of these hats, but I feel like if we're not a good partnership, then one of the hats can become heavier than the other one. And I think of her as a mother, but also as a wife and as a woman who I, think very highly of. And I want her to feel like she can wear those hats equally, and not just an exhausted mom, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And I feel like maybe that's where some women, well, I don't want to speak for other women, but I feel like maybe that can lead to um, some stress, I guess, in some relationships, if one of those hats gets too heavy, or you don't feel like somebody sees the other hat that you want to wear.
Right.
But I guess I view this as masculine. Like, hey, I
Yeah.
want to fix things, and I wanted my woman to dress up in a dress and go out with me, and I want to be. I mean, I don't know. I just view that as
Right.
masculine. I
Well, and
don't know.
that's what I mean. That I mean, I view you as somebody who's uber masculine, but I also view you as somebody who's uber masculine in the way that works, or in the way that's cool,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Not in the
Okay.
way that's stereotypically, like I want us to blow the perception of what masculine is about out of the water. And that's one of the reasons I appreciate you. And all the things that, you talk about and make sure that you talk about. And because it's not like, the thing, folks, you don't know this guy, but I mean, he's a leader in my community here, and people know who he is and what he stands for. And he's not, it's not like you're loud about it, but you're also not quiet about it either. Like you're
That's
out
true.
about the fact that all the things that we're talking about. I want to go back to because we haven't circled around there yet, to transformations. Because that's Brandon has been on the show, and we've talked about Deja, and we've had oh my god, I'm completely blanking on names right now. Oh, Lindsay. We had little baby drag queen's mom on. That's like we just had stuff from around transformation. So folks know that we have this event in town called Transformations, and where mostly, but definitely cis men. Start out with women, but then cis men have a consultant drag queen and do a performance. And you did that a couple years ago, right?
Well, it was 21.
Yeah.
Wait, it was January of 22.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
January 22.
last year. That's right.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and one of the things you mentioned is you shaved your beard off, and it's the first time you've shaved your beard off since what, you grew one when you were 14 or something.
Well,
How old you were when you could grow a beard, but
yeah, I probably grew my parents made me shave in high school, but then as soon as I got to college, I had a goatee probably. I had the stages of a full beard. Like and then I had the little kind of boomerang, like just
Yeah,
under the
yeah, yeah.
jaw with
Right.
no. And
Uh-huh.
then I'm from Topeka, so I had to go through the jawbone beard phase. Um, and then and then because I wasn't real comfortable with a mustache. But then like I just kind of wondered what I look like in a full beard, and I've never turned back. Now I keep joking. I kind of want to do the just for men. I wonder how much my beard ages me.
Oh, it's
Uh,
gorgeous though. Don't do that. It's
it's
so pretty.
I like the I would never keep it up,
So
but I'm
pretty. That's
just
what
curious
I mean,
what
I
I would look
miss
like with
mine.
it.
I shaved mine off because I started through menopause and I wanted to see my lady face because this is what I would look like
Mm.
have I not been on testosterone at all because I've been off for 5 years. Obviously the hairline is missing, but otherwise, and that's part of the reason that I like to talk about that is this is a lady face, even though it doesn't look like a lady face. It's not, and having this face growing up against other women like our wives, for example, I wasn't ever a little girl that people fawned over about being a beautiful little girl. It wasn't like,
Oh
look at the pretty girl. That was not happening to me.
man, I got
It
to be
was
honest. That's weird. I have a
never
almost 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and it's just kind of
effed
wild. I
up.
know people mean it
I know,
well. I don't, not, but they're just like, oh, she's the first thing out of their mouth is, oh,
right?
she's so pretty, and I'm
I
just
know.
like, I mean, yeah, but come on, that's the
Well,
weird. It's
I
just
mean,
that's the first
we
thing
had the
that you
same
say, like,
thing
oh,
with
she's so
ours.
pretty.
And that's why we actually we felt like we may have done our kid an injustice because that happened so much to our kid that we always downplayed it. And we're always like, you're so smart and you're so creative and you're so
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. That then by the time they got to junior high, they kind of had a complex about their looks. That they was like, oh my God.
Oh,
Everybody else in America is like, that baby is so beautiful. Look at that baby. She's so beautiful. Right.
we kind of
And
joke about
we're
that.
always
We
like,
need to.
and smart and
Yeah,
funny and creative because that's all they talk about is how beautiful you're. I mean, looks are what they
yeah.
talk about with little girls. If you had
We
boys,
kind of
they'd
joke
talk
that we
about
need to
how
knock them
strong he
down.
was.
Oh
Right?
yeah,
That's
we
what
just
we
like,
were
well, that
saying
we
is
need
we
to.
have
Yeah, we don't
knock
want
her
you to feel
down.
like you can trade on being pretty. Like we were like, yeah, but, yeah, you're not that pretty, you know.
Right, exactly. It's like you're smart, you're other things, but it is fascinating how much people comment on looks about little girls because they don't usually do that with boys. They're going to talk
Mm-mm.
about how strong they are, how tough they are, how cute they are, how whatever, smart, all kinds of things.
Yeah,
They don't comment on their faces. So you shaved off your beard, and then what was that like for you?
it was weird. I mean, it just it totally changes the shape of your face. You know, it's just like a what, a quarter inch of hair. It's not
I
like
know, but
now,
it's
now
still weird. Like I have
I've
no
had a
chin.
yeah,
Look,
yeah.
like as much of my face.
And I've had the full, I've grown out. I used to grow out every winter. I would stop shaving or stop trimming it around October, and I would grow it till about February, and then I would shave it back down for our anniversary because Katie was supportive but not a fan of the full beard. So then it obviously was more extreme, but yeah, like it just I think kind of like I said in that talk, I don't think it would have been as big of a deal if I wasn't kind of deconstructing everything at the time. It just felt like kind of the final straw a little bit, and I felt really unattractive. Um, I knew she wouldn't literally leave me, but I was like, at least in the back of her head, she was going to recoil a little bit. My wife was going to be like, "Oh, love you, honey," like just
Yeah,
just a little bit of that.
right.
And I told her maybe I should knock it down once a year so I can just keep in my mind what my face looks like. After that experience, so it wouldn't be so jarring, like to see my own face. But yeah, it was just never really thought about it that way, or thought about it as important or as a part of my man. I just, if you'd asked me before, I would just said, "Well, I like the way it looks." I don't know. That's just all I would have said. I like the way I have heavy eyebrows. It helps bring out my eye. I mean, I don't know. I just would have come up with some reason that I like the way it looks. And
Yeah,
it certainly took on more of a dimension at that.
yeah. Well, and part of my wanting to talk to you came a little bit more. I mean, it's all because we were going to talk earlier and we didn't. And so it's interesting that we're having this conversation now because I literally just had that experience. So I shaved off my beard because I'm going full. February 14th, I've been a year without any menses, so I'm full on menopause. So I thought since I'm talking about menopause, which is part of a function of a female body, that I would shave off my face and see my female face.
Hmm.
And the first thing that's right there for me is, oh God, like, oh no,
Mm.
right? And my first thought too, same, was like, oh God, Jessica's not gonna want that. Like, that is
Mm-hmm.
not, no.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing too, if you ask me, I'd just be like, I just like the beard, right? But the
Yeah.
reality is there's a couple things. A, the beard makes me better looking, I think. And B, the beard makes it so all of a sudden I go from what is that to yes, sir, whatever you need, sir. What can I do for you, sir?
Oh,
It's
as far as how
mind
the
blowing
world
me.
treats you.
Oh my
Okay.
God. Without the beard, they don't know what I am or that she, and they're confused and blah, 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 blah. And I go through that whole back thing of being a butch woman and, all the way the world treats a butch woman. And the second I grow the beard in, it's yes or no, sir. How can I serve you, sir? So,
That is interesting. Because even now, I didn't even have to deal with that. Nobody was
right.
saying
Nobody's
yes,
going to
ma'am, to
ma'am
me
you.
without a beard. You're right, right.
Nobody's going to call you a she without the beard.
No, no.
I
Maybe
thought
less
mine,
attractive,
I was surprised
but
because I don't have the breasts, I thought, but it didn't matter if I got the earrings going and the more feminine face. And I had a hat on before, so you didn't see the hairline. Yeah,
mm,
it was really interesting. And it's like the second I grow the beard in, it's yes, sir. Like the beard just makes,
that is interesting.
yeah, the beard immediately turns me into a dude. So, and makes it safer. So, and then I have
Oh yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I have a little guilt because I'm like, oh, I get to pass. Like I can grow this out, and then I'm just right in there, right? If I shave it off, then, and that's why I was saying is like maybe I need to shave off my beard every year, just to, and for myself to get to where I can love that face as much as I love the other face. It's like part of that is like just about self love and like acceptance of myself too, like you were saying.
Yeah, I would say because even after because last year I kept it short for a little while after the stubble came in, but even that I left the stubble. Like
Right?
I was looking at my face and the shape of my face, but I still left the stubble. Like I never really did get clean shaven again
Yeah.
after that performance. So yeah, it's interesting because for me it was more just my masculinity not presenting. I think I still presented masculine without my beard,
Yeah.
but I do feel like once you've seen yourself in foam hips and 4 pairs of tights and I mean all that, it was a lot.
Yeah, it's a
It was
lot,
a lot.
right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
learning to walk in heels. And I don't know, there was something emotional about being on a transgender garment site and ordering, like actually putting in my credit card information and ordering just the reality. Like it just, I never would have thought of that as a thing that mattered, especially like we just order bullshit off Amazon all the time. But
Right. Yeah.
that stuff was weird.
Yeah.
It wasn't, it's not who I am.
Yeah.
And I get that you're just playing a role, but I would argue the intensity of transformations. I think if I had just dressed up as a girl for one night, it would have been a way different emotional experience than, I spent every day for, what did I start? September, October, almost 4 months getting ready for that. I had never danced a day in my life. I learned to dance. I learned to dance in heels. I had to start meeting with my, oh, I just want to say sponsor. My wife teases me, my consultant.
Right.
So it was a really intense, and you don't have to do that. You don't have to put in that much time, but like I said in the talk, like learning a dance was one of my bucket list items, and I
Yeah.
just so I did a Beyonce medley. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
But I put in the time and I put in the effort. I read some books that Brandon gave me. I watched a couple of documentaries. Like I tried to dive in a little bit,
Yeah.
take it seriously, and so it wasn't just putting on a dress for a night, which
Right.
would have been uh, a way different, I think, emotional experience.
Well, and part of what you experienced really is like similar to what those of us who are trans guys slash assigned female at birth, but consider ourselves masculine, are forced to do in like junior high or our whole lives, depending on who you are. But like I said, there's a certain point where it's okay for you to be a tomboy, and then at some point you just have to get your shit together. Like you just gotta like start to wear a dress and start to show up, put on the makeup, and do all the things. And if you don't, then people. I mean, I literally in junior high, I had my friends holding me down to put makeup on my face. So it's
Oh,
stuff like that where they're just talking you into it. You're just, if you're not going to go with that flow, then you're going to constantly be questioned about why you're not. Like, why aren't you doing those things? It's like, I didn't know I was supposed to. you know, but like that whole world of you having to wear heels and do all that kind of stuff is exactly what I experienced when it was like, and me, not as much as like other dudes who were assigned female at birth that just are like, this is not who I am. It's not what I'm not comfortable in this world. Right. So, one of the things I love about transformations is it's putting you guys in those situations that does expand your horizons and does have you think about, what's it like to be even just a woman walking through the world and having to deal with all this stuff all the time. So,
I don't think anybody mistook me for a woman, but
well, no,
yeah, it definitely had me thinking more
I
about
just
some of
mean,
the,
I just mean they're
the
having to think about stuff like, where your makeup
yeah,
is,
yeah.
or what your ass
Yeah,
looks like in those pants, things like
yeah.
that.
And I would sort of imagine that it's become really obvious to me how completely in the background we don't even notice that how female sexuality centric our view of females is, like
Yes.
everything from, and I sort of imagined in my head when you said that like once you become uh appear sexually available physically, like once you start to hit puberty and whatever, that's when they want you to start to play that the more traditional feminine role.
Right.
It's sort of the same thing that makes me imagine why, and again, I don't mean to ruffle any feathers, but why lesbian chic seems to be so much more acceptable than male gayness. Is women and men are all battered with the constant view of females as sexual, the same commercials and the same ads and the
Oh yeah.
same movie. I mean, we all, men and women, all see the same things directed at men.
Yeah.
And it just sort of makes sense to me why lesbian chic is this kind of cute
Oh yeah.
thing
Well,
that's like not as big a
we can
deal.
sexualize that, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The other thing
And
with
men,
transphobia that I try to get people to get is that most of transphobia is about the hatred of women, because that when, first of all, people don't even know trans men exist. It's trans women that they hate, because God forbid you want to be, why would you want to be a woman? But it's like how much we always hate women and then sexualize women, right? God forbid men ever want to do that. There's something wrong with them if they want to do that.
I just cannot help but think of those phobias as insecurity. It's the
Oh,
only way I
completely.
can see
Oh,
it. Like,
completely. Oh,
because
it
if that
totally
could
is.
happen to that man, then it could happen to me.
Right.
Or like I just can't view it. Or if that man touches me, am I going to get gay on me
Yes.
and turn gay? Like I don't know. I'm just like it's. I felt this way before I put on drag, but having been in drag, that's kind of what I said in my, like, I'm just a dude, like I'm a dude. And I can be around as much gayness, transness, whatever, and I just would
It's not
never
going to
worry
make
that
you
it's
any
gonna
less of a
like,
dude. Yep.
right? So I always view that phobia as insecurity, especially the phobias that try to disguise themselves as protecting women.
Right.
Like that's the biggest. Like, come on, guy. Like you know exactly what you're doing when you go home, and not like not respecting your wife, and like
No,
now you care. Like that stuff that disguises itself as protecting women, I think is the weakest shit. But
I agree.
um,
I agree.
yeah, it was definitely a window.
Yeah. No kidding. Well, I sure appreciate you sharing those insights. And as always, it's just great to talk to you. And I've been wanting to get a cisgender guy on here to talk about masculinity for a while. So I
Am
appreciate
I the first? Did I get the
you
cis
on.
cherry? The
You do.
cis the
You get
guy
the cis
cherry?
cherry. That's right.
Oh,
You do.
nice, nice.
On
I
this
like to
show,
hear
anyway.
it.
So far, I think you're the only one. Yeah. So I appreciate you having these conversations with me, because it's so interesting. Even guys I know that, you know, once they transition and become, like that they've always considered themselves as men, because I'm not. I'm more of a non-binary human and
Okay.
never did this to be a dude. Never was a dude, not a dude. But I do have friends who were assigned female at birth who moved into that world of dudeness. And even some of them, like, it's so fascinating to me because you don't have to be born with a penis to tip over into masculine shithead. right? Like you
Oh,
can
wow.
you can transition and turn into a shithead dude. Like that happens too. So I appreciate that, especially your lens and that you're out there working with vets and just always in this, conversation with masculine people, but you're also always bringing the love. So
Well,
I appreciate you
I
so
think
much
my
for that.
absolutely. I think my chronic imposter syndrome even translates into the happiness that I feel in my life, and I always feel like everybody else should be able to have a chance at that. To feel, I just never feel like I deserve everything I have, with my wife and these kids and my life, and I just anything that feels like a barrier to somebody else having a chance at a happy life really bothers me. So just I don't know, like I want people to be happy. I want people to have a chance of being happy, and I don't know, it just doesn't seem fair when they're not.
Well, I appreciate you taking that perspective. That's a unique perspective to have, I think. Tell folks where we can find you because I want people to support your work and be able to know where to find you to look you up, especially your symbiotic.
Symbiotic Behavioral Treatment Center is on Facebook. We're also on the internet at symbioticbtc.org. I will say COVID put a real cramp in our style, which included a lot of like face-to-face classes and volunteering. So we're just getting going again with that, but we do have every intention of getting back on the capital campaign to build the center kind of behind the pet campus there on Wakarusa. So that should be coming at you here by third or fourth quarter of 2023 of kind of getting our operations back on track.
Right on. Awesome. Anthony, thank you so much for who you are for the world and for being my friend and for always
Oh,
engaging these powerful conversations. I appreciate you a lot. Thanks for being on the show.
absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Gender Reveal Party podcast. I hope you loved it. And if you did, would you take a second and go do all the things like subscribe, rate, review, tell all your friends? Apparently, if you do that, the podcast platforms are more likely to share it. And if you think these stories are important, please take 3 minutes to just go do that. I'd really appreciate it. Also, I'd love to connect with you on social. On Instagram and Facebook, I'm at the Gender Reveal Party, and on Twitter, I'm at Prior J. It's a real joy and privilege to bring you this podcast. Come back soon. Love you, bye.